I am trying to make an actual TV show.
It's so hard to find a funny show that isn't filthy. I watch them, but I don't want to.
Let's do this.
Fire, like lots of fire.
So dedicated.
So cool. Where's it go from there, you know?
Oh, have I got your attention now?
This is bigger than you can handle.
You got any plans for tonight?
But what are you waiting for? Let's go.
Cool? Absolutely!
So welcome to Mentorship and Collaboration, a conversation with the team behind Dr. Death. Just a little backstory on this incredible idea for a panel. SeriesFest has been so lucky to be supported not only by Universal, you've seen them at so many events this festival, but also by Littleton Road Productions, Patrick Macmanus and Kelly Funke, all these people that you're going to be hearing from on the panel today have gone above and beyond to be mentors to us at SeriesFest and always come to our aid and say yes to us for everything. So we're so excited for you guys to get a look into how they really develop content. And the person that is going to be leading that conversation is the absolutely fantastic and also basically like family member, Mr. Jeff Conway from Forbes. Please welcome. Any way you want to go. You want to sit over here? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Super exciting. Who has watched, first of all, Dr. Death before they all come up? Okay, if you haven't, shame on you, but you have time. It's on Peacock. But I want to introduce our amazing panel that we have today. The first person I'm going to introduce is Patrick Macmanus, creator and executive producer of Dr. Death. Yeah, maybe put we'll put the ladies.
Yeah. Yes. I'm gonna sit in the dark.
Chivalry. No.
It's where I belong.
We'll hug you over a little bit more. Ashley Michael Hoban, showrunner, executive producer of Dr. Death. You look lovely, by the way. Beatrice Springborn, president of UCP and Universal International Studios. Hello. And last but not least, Kelly Funk, not Funky, president of Littleton Road Productions. Welcome. So first of all, congratulations. I've had the joy to speak with several of you before for Dr. Death Season 2 back in December in Los Angeles. Again, on Peacock, both Seasons 1 and 2 are streaming now. I'm curious, Beatrice, with that shout out, do I get a free subscription to Peacock?
Saying you do better promo than any of us.
Oh, sweet. Well.
Like, do you work for us?
No, but I could. But first of all,
got a job for you.
Congratulations. These shows are incredible. They're such standalone on their own as well. First season, incredible. We had Joshua Jackson, Christian Slater. Season 2, we had Mandy Moore and Edgar Ramirez. This all comes, if you don't know, this came from, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Wondery podcast. This is all it comes from. And these are true crime stories that happened, which I think makes it even more unsettling but captivating to the viewer. Would you all agree?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
No. Patrick? No, because I was thinking, we would talk a lot about this, about like why we're so drawn into it, and it feels like the true crime world, and I feel like it just goes back to the basics of storytelling, which is like we create stories to come to understanding of something that we don't understand, and I think when you have these like really terrible but fascinating stories, it's a little bit of a way of getting catharsis and digging in deeper and discovering the truth, and it's a way to like kind of gain control over uncontrollable situations.
Absolutely. And before we get too far, for people that have not seen Dr. Death, can one of you give a little bit of a synopsis of both, about Dr. Chris, Dr. Paolo, Benita? Can you explain that to the audience?
You want me to go first? I'll do one. Okay.
One and then two, because one comes before two.
That sounds like a good idea. God, you're so good at math. So season 1 of Dr. Death is, it focuses on Dr. Christopher Dunst, who was a neurosurgeon in Texas, who basically slipped his way through his system. He was a really great talker. He was an extraordinary researcher. There's very little question over the fact that how intelligent he was. But he was a terrible surgeon. But he was making the hospitals that he was operating in money. And every time that he ended up having some semblance of a medical issue, we'll just put it in that, he just got moved to another hospital because everybody was trying to avoid litigation. He ended up either killing or maiming 33 patients over the course of his career, in quotes, and he's currently serving a life sentence in Texas. And I just want to add on to something that I think makes Dr. Death different than other true crime shows, is the fact that we also had the opportunity to be able to raise awareness about medical malpractice and about issues that are had in the medical system. And that's a rare occasion that you can sort of both hopefully be entertaining as well as be able to raise awareness about something that is absolutely a problem, not only in our country but around the world, which is, I think, an excellent segue to season 2.
The whole world.
The whole world.
Well, so we were able to take a lot of the themes that we had in season 1 and kind of basically Paolo Macchiarini went from not state to state in the U.S., but kind of country to country. So he's a surgeon, but he works specifically, he was developing these artificial tracheas that, long story short, please watch the series, they don't work so well. So as his patients are becoming sicker and sicker, it takes a long time for these things to kind of start to fail. So as his patients become sicker and sicker, some other doctors working around him and with him start to kind of dig into his past and his research and track down the path that he got there that surreptitiously kind of slid around mostly Europe and Russia to get to where he was then. And I think there's so much in common with these guys. Great talker. That's another, like, Paolo can talk his way out of anything. And so, yeah, it's such an honor to be able to work on these shows that, help people practically in everyday situations, because we all get sick.
Absolutely. And Beatrice and Kelly, I'm going to get to you in a moment, but I believe you told me back in December, Ashley, Michael, and Patrick, that season 1, you were feet on the ground, Patrick, for this show. Season 2, Ashley, Michael, you were feet on the ground. What was the difference? I know obviously there was also COVID that happened during this time. How was that production different?
Hers?
Yeah, well, we'll start with Ashley, Michael, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't there. That's how it was awesome. Yeah.
It sucked because Patrick wasn't there. Yeah, I mean, season 1, we were ready to go on March 13th. We were the day before we started shooting, March 13th. So then by the time he went back into production, I was on one of his other shows. So season 2 was, production's always hard. It's always difficult, but I have had a wonderful, wonderful mentor and collaborator in him. So I felt very prepared and excited to take over and try to live up to the Dr. Death name.
Yeah. And Beatrice,
you did.
How did UCP and Universal, what is the relationship between your company and putting the show on with these creators?
So we have a deal with Littleton Road, which is run by the lovely Kelly and Patrick. And this was also born from a podcast, a Wondery podcast of the same name. And interestingly, this was the first show that I worked on coming to UCP. So I started in December 2020. And Patrick and I think we only met over Zooms, where the whole time he was either in a COVID mask or some sort of, COVID protection. And we were also going through this is a time where we were doing massive testing on set. And so it was just a strange world. But Patrick and Kelly were so composed, and we were rewriting the rules. There was so much going on we'd never done before. It was the first show back for us, and so it was just a really interesting time to get to know each other, because I felt like being thrown into these crazy unknowns on a show that I'd come into. I hadn't been there when it was initiated. Was a really good way to start our partnership in many ways, because you know what people are made of. So it was a good introduction.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And you all may not know, but actually Kelly and Patrick are brother and sister. We actually put them this way because in case you guys were going to fight, we're going to separate you guys. That's why we did this.
I said at the last panel. Exactly right.
But I'm curious, Littleton Road Productions, can you tell me about how it originated and how it's evolved up to now?
You want to take that? Littleton Road? Yeah. No. Okay, great. So I think the easiest way to describe it, so I was the first one in the family that went west and started an independent film in the 90s, and then Patrick came in the 2000s. First, he wanted to be an actor. He was an amazing cadaver on NCIS over and over. And
I heard he
That was
moved a lot, though. I heard
CSI,
he
first of
moved.
all.
He was amazing.
I was alive in NCIS.
He was amazing. And at a certain point in time, he decided he wanted to write. And to give you context for those of you who know a little bit about our wonderful history of television, that was around 2004, which really was before the golden age of TV that we define now. And groundbreaking television was just starting to really be defined. And this man who did Dr. Death, those were the shows that he wanted to do in an era of, I don't want to say the Cosby Show, but you inserted 3 multicam, NBC comedy, and he kept pitching me dark stuff, and I'm like, it's never going to sell. And so we finally came up with it didn't. And he finally came up with a comedy, and that was the first, believe it or not, it was the first thing that he actually sat down to write. He wrote it in a weekend. We were able to get it to a producer friend of ours, who's still a friend to the company to this day.
Amazing.
And that was the start of Littleton Road, was us sharing a bigger, better breakfast for $5.99 at Norm's on La Cienega. We were broke. We came from a very humble family, and we would sit, and he would write every week, and I would note it, and we would argue about it and get kicked out of Norm's every Wednesday.
fought a
and
lot.
we do it again.
So then, Kelly and Patrick, from your own experiences and getting that big break, so to speak, what do you want to say to other creatives out here that are putting their own projects out from your own experiences? What would you say to them that you wish you would have been able to know or have heard then?
We talked a little bit about this before on the prior panel, but we're talking about the concept of fortitude, right? I think that there are 3 parts to success. One of it is just showing up and doing the work. And in the beginning, you do the work with no recognition, and you really feel like you're alone. I think it was one of the things that Patrick and I were really blessed to have, was even in our lack of success, we had each other. So go find somebody maybe who isn't your brother by blood, but is your brother or sister because you believe in your vision and your life dream. I think the other part of the puzzle is fortitude. It's that willingness to keep going. I mean, Patrick's very honest about the fact that, Dr. Death was his 42nd pilot that he had written. And that didn't mean he wasn't selling things along the way, but that was his first show, so fortitude. And then there's also a part that's luck, and that's the part where I think you have an obligation for mentorship and for giving back, and that's something that is really a core value of Littleton Road. It's very important to us that we are bringing people along, because at a moment in time, for each of us, for all of us, somebody took a moment and opened a door. And I think that if we were willing to do that, not only in this industry, but really in our larger world, maybe we'd be in a slightly better place. So those are, anything you, yeah?
I'm not following that up.
So, Dr. Death season 1 and 2, there's such a great creative behind all this. There's such a great cast. I know that the production works so hard on this, but what made it feel different from other productions you've worked on before, between the camaraderie maybe of the actors, of the crew, of being able to make this work during also a pandemic?
I mean, for me, it was just that. I mean, I'd sent a letter out to the cast and crew on the day that we wrapped out in New York before we went to Albuquerque, and sort of the theme of even though I don't like to write in theme. Yeah, sorry. The thrust of the letter was about the fact that none of us had done this thing before, and all of us we had to be separated. And the idea that all of these people who were terrified, and we were. I mean, no matter what Universal and Peacock or like all the other productions were doing to try to protect us, which they did. They did an amazing, amazing job. I mean, I kept saying over and over again, I cannot begin to imagine being on that side. Like I had like one crew and one group of cast that I was trying to help out. I cannot begin to imagine having thousands of people that you were responsible for figuring out how to protect thousands and thousands of people, and you never got gratitude, right? It was always just like whatever you were doing was never enough. It was never, everyone was unsafe no matter what, and you were just trying to figure it out yourself. What we had in our little, it really was a family, was a group of people who just had to trust one another. And and there was the sort of ego went out the door, which is so often a poison pill of what we do. The complaining, other than feeling unsafe or fearing that went out the window, and people just did the job and they supported each other. And I can tell you that the shows that I did before and the shows I've done since didn't ever have the same vibe. And I got to be honest with you, I am extraordinarily grateful for that opportunity. And it isn't about having my own show. I was grateful for doing it in that time, in that way, because it was a time where you got to really feel like you were a family. And people talk lip service to that so often in our industry, but under those circumstances, that is exactly what it was. And I look back, honestly, and I mean this, it sounds like BS, but a great deal of fondness for that time, because I was proud. And I wasn't even proud of the material. I was proud of what the people were doing.
Absolutely. And I know you creatives in this room too, we all know when we have these passion projects what we want to do with this project, like what our goal is here. But when it comes to Littleton, Universal, Dr. Death production, was there anything when you were making these true stories about these doctors and these patients and these families that were hurt because of it that you didn't want this to become?
Patrick, he's been really great.
I love how this is beginning. Go on.
Let me say something about Patrick. True crime is a crowded world, and you've been so great about finding different ways in, and so that always it didn't ever feel like we were like diving into like true crime, like in the way that I think we usually think of the word. It felt like drama based on real events more than anything. So having that perspective, and then like we were saying earlier, like having the ability to have on the ground impact, and speak to something so universal, going to the doctor, that this feels special. And to do it with these people, that's the other thing, is like at the end of the day, you're only going to have as good of a time as much as you enjoy the people around you, and so it's hard to undersell, I can't overstate how much the collaboration and the mentorship has made a difference.
And I'm curious, with Dr. Death season 1 and 2 on Peacock, I did another time, so hopefully that subscription's happening. Ding, ding. Are you noticing any difference from public feedback from season 1 and season 2? Like, what has been the most memorable feedback that you've received, for good or bad, that has really stuck with you and maybe has been different from the story that you hear in season 1 and the story we got in season 2 with Paolo, season 1 Chris, season 2 Paolo?
I mean, I can tell you the piece of feedback that I like make. It's like a tiny thing that has sort of haunted me since that we got one of the characters' positions wrong. We'd said that she was a physician's assistant, but she was actually a nurse. And I know this is going to sound weird, but there was a bit of blowback from their union about the fact that we were besmirching them, and even though it was a small thing, it's indicative of the pressure that is on you when you're telling these stories, that you have got to do it right as you can possibly do it, because especially with stories like this, I feel like it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Like, we have Dr. Death is special because it has the opportunity to talk outside of murder and outside of assault in the classic sense, and really talk about something that affects, as you were saying, everyone. And if you get one of those details wrong, it's not about it like affecting your name on the show, but it's about affecting these people and what they do for a living. Because so much of Dr. Death was dangerous because yes, we're exploring, these aberrations, right? And granted, those aberrations, they are magnified, and there are other aberrations out there. But I've said it before, and I will say it again, and it was particularly special doing it during COVID, that so many of these doctors and nurses and medical practitioners are just decent, amazing people who are constantly trying to save people's lives. And during COVID, we were watching it all the time, people banging pots and going out in the streets and cheering them on, right? And to be then telling a story in which you're devastating their industry at the same time, getting those little details wrong really affected me. On the positive side, I will say that even though I think that our show had a percentage of a reason for why this happened, it was also the podcast, it was also the news story, the magazine story, but a law changed in Texas. It's now called the Dr. Death Law, and it's entirely built in order to try to prevent anything like Christopher Dunst happening again. And I've said this again before, like, if a show that we do can play even a small part of that, I mean, come on. Like, that is so much more important than, and I mean this, than Globes or Emmys or anything like that, right? Like, that means you've played a small part in something really big. And that is a rarity in what we do, right? And so I am extraordinarily proud of whatever modicum of responsibility that we share to have played a part in that happening. Fuck it. All the rest of it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And we always say, because I think I get very anxious about people coming to us with questions about, like, do you feel like you're harming? Do you feel like you're doing harm? And I can understand it. I get where that question comes from. But for every Dunch and for every Paolo Macchiarini, we have 1,000 doctors working to take them, to try to hold them responsible for what they've done. And so, I don't know. It feels like a real thing. And I get, like, I mean, I have like 18 followers on social media, but
you know Jeff Conway.
I do.
Oh, but yours sounds healthier.
But Jeff Conway follows me.
I sure do.
But I get messages on social media and my email of, like, people that are like, hey, I have a story that you need to hear. And it's like, whoa, the fact that you took the time, you watched a television show, and then you took the time and you looked up our names, and then you reached out and you're like, listen, this is happening, can you help? And to like have the responsibility of, like, and the honor of, can you help? Because I think you can. That means everything.
Yeah. The thing I love about Dr. Death too, especially season 2, is oftentimes we see in these true crime series the quote-unquote villain as the full focus. And in season 2, we have Mandy Moore playing Benita, who is this wonderful woman that gets hoodwinked and gets tricked by this charming doctor. When I spoke to her, actually, too, back in December, she said that she was so grateful for this role because, as you may know, Mandy was playing Rebecca on This Is Us, which was incredible, but she was ready for something different. And she really appreciated that. But she also said about Benita, her character, she didn't understand, like, how does a woman that is a TV executive, a confident young professional, get tricked by this man? And it's a thing that I think that the audience could relate to, though.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we all said it to each other. It's like, really? You didn't really? But then you dig into it, and you dig into the gaslighting, and you dig into the hope of it, of, like, you want the people that you love to be the people that they are in your mind. And, it's so much easier to fall into that trap than I think we think, and it happens to so many more women than we would ever imagine. I mean, the numbers on this is insane, and that's people that admitted it. And Mandy, she's really smart about her. I mean, she's really smart, but she's really thoughtful about her career. So we were really lucky to have her because she wanted to take that pivot, and she brought a sense of kind of, I think, grace and cleverness to this role that was important, because it's through her that you understand why and how Paulo got away with what he got away with. Because as crazy it is to have, like, your fiance hoodwink you, and I mean, he wasn't asking for money, it was just kind of like a love con. As crazy as that is, he put plastic tracheas in at least 9 people, and every single one of them died painfully and slowly. So how the hell does that happen? I hope that what Benita's story does is help the audience see how he slowly, very mechanically, and very consciously pulls the wool over the entire world's eyes.
Absolutely. And Beatrice, UCP, moving forward after shows like Dr. Death, have you noticed that the content and the priority that you follow within your programming evolving or changing from shows that you take on like Dr. Death?
Absolutely, and I think we've done a lot of true crime in quotes, but for us, it is really about, even when we're doing something that feels salacious or on its face value, just entertainment, and we never want to exploit, and we want to focus on the victims, or even the people that were, involved, weren't necessarily the victims, but are part of the story, that aren't just the killers and some gruesome story about the killer. And we've focused our development energy and time to find those stories where we can do that, right? And a lot of those have been with Littleton Road because we know that they're going to treat it with respect. And we have, there's a whole infrastructure within the studio that's focused on making sure that we are not exploiting, that we are doing our due diligence about how we represent characters. I mean, a lot of times these characters are composites, but even when we're doing composites, we want to make sure that we're treating the real victims in a way that they're having respect and their stories being represented well. And we also do a lot of campaigns that are grassroots around the topics, around medical malpractice. We partner with Littleton Road to make sure that there's an element of social outreach while we're putting out the shows. And I do think there's a responsibility when we are doing these true crime stories to not make it tabloid material, but to use it as a way to educate. And I mean, you also have to entertain, but through that, bring attention and light to topics that we should be talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention here that Universal has been so supportive of Littleton's philanthropic branch. That's an entire branch of their company that is just for this. It's just to make sure that whatever stories you guys are telling, there's a practical implication on the ground for people to access that whatever support they need.
Ashley, Michael, glad you brought that up. Can you, Kelly and Patrick, speak to that philanthropy?
I can't.
But you teed it up beautifully. Absolutely. Kelly.
So the easiest way to think about it is we are not participant media. God rest their souls. Participant
Recently.
just left the space after 20 years. It was a groundbreaking concept for a production company. For those of you who know, they picked their material based on a social action theme. When I came back for third tour of duty and Patrick asked me to come back and work with him, we talked about the fact that at a corporate level, our partners like NBC Universal are certainly doing a great deal of work around, raising awareness. And we felt like a production company had a unique opportunity to be able to really do it at a micro level. So while we don't pick our shows based on a quote unquote social action concept, right? We pick our shows based on an entertainment value proposition first. What we go back and do with our showrunners is ask them to extrapolate out a thread that we can then turn into a social action campaign. And we do it at a micro level. So we, for example, on Dr. Death Season 2, we brought in the doctor who's the lead medical researcher for Google. And we asked him to help us craft a campaign talking about how medical research is both a pro and a con for not only the patients, but also for the healthcare workers, because there's a reality to both sides of those coins. And then we go back and we put together a social media campaign that launches day and date with the support of Beatrice and Jen and our wonderful PR team. We also do funding out of our own company into micro organizations that are doing that work. So we want to be able to actually put literally our money where our mouth is, because we believe that we've been blessed to be able to do these shows and we should be giving back. And then we also have a social media team that monitors the entire internet for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the show, because what happens is that people take their stories and their heartache really to the internet, to social media, and they just will sort of call out. They don't actually know who to talk to, and we actually respond to every single post that's on social media for the span of 8 weeks, and we give them places to go if they've been, for example, if they have been the victim of medical malpractice, if they are interested in how to protect themselves moving forward. And so we actually are in a conversation with the larger community around the United States around the issue.
That's amazing to be a show that is actually doing good for the community from the content that we're seeing on the screen. So I gotta applaud you. Congratulations. That's amazing. And thank you for what you do. I'm curious, we all know last year we had a writer's strike and a SAG-AFTRA strike. So since then, I've heard some people say we have a lot of productions happening, some people saying nothing's still going. From your perspectives, from what you're seeing in the industry right now, what are you seeing about productions and how they're picking up, how they're slowing down? What are you seeing?
I think everybody's looking at me, so I'll answer it.
Oh, yes. It was for everybody, I promise.
I think it's too TBD, right? We're only a few months out from the strike. We have had an incredibly blessed year at UCP and our international studio since the top of the year, and had multiple shows ordered, which I know is not the case for everyone. But what we're going to be seeing is more of a focus on budget, more of a focus on packages, more of a focus on things that are called like no-brainers, right? Like something that is ongoing and has a star and has an engine. So, I keep pointing to these shows that are out of the box that we're seeing right now succeed. What the shows that won Emmys this year. I will keep shouting out Baby Reindeer all day long, but as a show that just gives me hope for where we're going. But within the studio, what we can do best is just make the shows that are quality with great writers who know how to run a show. I think that makes things more sellable, and ultimately that's the best we can do, and we hope that the industry adjusts. But it is definitely a to be seen.
Absolutely. And these Dr. Death stories, again, came from the Wondery podcast. Last time we spoke, Ashley, Michael, and Patrick, we talked about season 3, Hope. And I know there's so many to choose from this Wondery podcast. So as creators, how do you choose which story is the best to go from television? Because some work on a podcast, some work for television, some work for both. How do you see that?
You just mean in general, right? Not specific to Dr. Death, in general. I wish that there was some brilliant silver bullet answer to your question, but there just isn't. I mean, to me, you know it when you see it. I will say that as it relates to Dr. Death in particular, all you had to do is listen to the first episode of that podcast, and you were like, this is important. And that the characters are amazing, and that the story just propels itself. I said, and I hate to say this in front of B, but I felt like it sort of wrote itself a little bit. It was so ready-made. You just had to figure out how to make it work for television. I will say that I think that my personal focus has shifted a little bit in terms of the fact that I do want to. I agree 100% with what Kelly said. She's 100% right. It's entertainment first, and then what is the issue? We just recently began conversations with Human Rights Watch, our company has, about how we might find partnerships there. And I do think that it could also work in reverse. I do think that you could find the issue and then find the entertainment within it. We haven't proven that yet. It's just in its nascent stages right now. But I am very proud of what Hoban and our teams have done on Dr. Death. I know it is not a Peacock show, but it's a UCP show, what we did on The Girl from Plainville. We've got some projects that are in the works that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about, so I won't, because I got in trouble at last SeriesFest for announcing something that I wasn't supposed to announce. But they are also focused on issues and finding a way of telling familiar stories in a new way, as Hoban was talking about before. So I will say that I would like to focus, when we're telling true crime in particular, on how they affect the issue as well, because I think that we have something special, and I don't mean Littleton Road. I think that writers and directors and producers have a special opportunity where, yes, of course, we all just want to shut off our brains from time to time. God knows I barely have one, so I shut mine off very easily. But we also can actually do something important while also entertaining. So I guess it's a long-winded way of me saying I'm not really sure, but I know it when I see it.
Well, can we speak more specifically to a potential of a Dr. Death season 3? I'm just curious where that might be in the talk process. Is there anything exclusive you want to share with us right now? It's up to you.
There's nothing
any
exclusive.
announcements you'd like
Yeah,
to make?
there's no announcements that I would like to make. No. What I will say is that we are developing other series right now. I will tell you that if you asked me, there is nothing that would make me prouder and nothing that would make me more excited than if Hoban and I could do season 3 together. I adore this person on my right, and she's been an amazing ally of mine, and a stalwart fighter for me. And the idea of us being able to do it solidly together would make me very, very happy. And I know that there's a lot more stories to tell, and it's not just within the Wondery universe. I mean, we have got a collection of a lot of horror stories, unfortunately, from around the world as it relates to medical malpractice. So yes, there are more stories to tell. Whether or not we're going to tell them is to be determined as well, but we would love to do it.
Well, before I open it up to the audience, I'm curious too, what piece of advice, we're in 2024, the entertainment landscape that exists today, if you could give one piece of advice to people right here, right now, about how to proceed in this industry and to hopefully stand out and make the best work possible. What kind of advice would you give to these fellow creatives in front of us right now?
Besides to keep writing more and more and more, I think that's the thing we always come back to, because certain people have to hear it a bunch of times before they follow that advice, is to find the stories that you really love, because those are the ones that you're going to be able to pour your heart into. And I think it's pretty clear when you get into page 3 of a script whether or not this person really cares about that story. Because I think the only thing that's going to set you apart is a script that, for writers, I mean, there's lots of, but for writers, you know, the thing that's going to set you apart in this world, which is very, as B said, like we're in an amorphous moment right now, is a great story told with passion and with heart. So that's what I would say. And then I think we have sort of entered into this, I feel it, like I feel it on set, this sort of like new age of kindness and respect on set. And I would say making sure that we perpetuate that and keep it moving forward. I have been lucky in that, like, the people that I get to work with and work for are excellent people, but I think, there's this thing that everyone says, which is like no assholes rule, and they never follow through. So
it's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, like when people say that to me, I'm like, oh, I don't trust you, because the last person that told me that, it didn't go well. But I feel like there is this post-COVID, post-strike, like we really have a moment here and an opportunity to be really good to each other and to create sets that are humane for people and can allow for writers, producers, directors, and every single person that we don't think about every day when we're making these shows go home to their families. So I totally got off track there, but
that was great.
That's my thought.
Thank you for sharing. But also, Patrick, Beatrice, Kelly, any thoughts that you'd like to give to the crowd?
Look, I will just underline what she said, because it is something that I say often, which is that the only thing that you can control in this industry is how hard you work and how kind you are. And those are two things that are often ignored. So everything that she said is right. As we said in the last panel, you can only do so much, and then it is up to the gods. And there is no telling whether the gods are going, I said it all the time, whether they're going to touch you or not, right? And what I will say to that, just to add on, is that if they do, be grateful every single day and be humble every single day. No matter how powerful you get in the industry, ensure that you always come back to gratitude and humility, because it can all be taken away from you, yes, but also any other way of living is, in my opinion, grotesque. So we sitting up here are 4 of a select group in Hollywood who are just lucky to do this every single day. And I know B very well. I know Hoban very well. I clearly know this one over here very well, right? And these are 4 people that I look to every single day, and I know that they're grateful, and I know that they're humble, and I know that they're kind, and I know that they're hardworking, and I will only surround myself with those people, and that is it. And to Hoban's other point, and I promise I'll shut up, if you ever are in a position of power and you do come across the asshole, get rid of them. You can get rid of them. There is nothing that can't be cut around. There is nothing that can't be rehired. There is, you have a responsibility to continue to perpetuate that kindness. And the only way to do it is to take action.
Kelly, Beatrice, any thoughts?
I feel like that's a great place to drop the mic.
I was going to say one thing just to build on what B said, because I do think as there is a moment in time as a writer right now, right, where our industry needs you to take your creativity, and then it needs you to figure out how to write to a number. I know that sounds crazy, right? We sit down and we imagine that our imagination should be able to go a mile a minute. But if you can train yourself now to not only have imagination, but to be able to actually write so that things can be done at a number, that is a skill that will last you throughout your entire career. And so we reach these moments in time where any industry challenges you to do the hard thing. And this industry is challenging our writers right now to do the hard thing. But you can train yourself to do it. And that means if you have a really big idea, think about how you can get it done in 3 sets. Do you ever challenge yourself to do that? This is the time, this is the moment in time where if you're going to sell your spec script, you're not only going to sell it because it's a great idea, but you're going to sell it because it can get made at a number. And so I don't think you hear a lot about that in film school or in other programs, but it's a spidey skill. If you can put that in your back pocket, you need it now, and you will absolutely need it as you keep moving forward if you're going to be in this industry over the course of many decades. And this industry has had ups and downs many, many, many times. So that's just a little practical thing that I would say just think about if you can.
Thank you for sharing. I know during the Grey's Anatomy there was no time, so I'm going to give plenty of time to make sure you guys get to ask your questions. Can we have one right here?
Yeah, I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about like mentorship and like what kind of doors opened for you, how you got to the point that you are now.
Yeah, every door was opened to me because of these guys. So the way I got there was I was in grad school, and I was a graduate assistant, and one of the editing professors was working on a show called Marco Polo, and she needed an apprentice editor, and so I was like, yes, I'll take the job. And Patrick was running the show, and that's how we met. And it's really, I mean, luck. Certainly, that is what it is. Like it was just lucky to meet him at the time that we met. I think was good for both of us to have come together at that time. Certainly for me, but it was every. If you're with the right person and you kind of share the outlook, and I think we've grown a lot together, and because of him, I've grown a lot. But it's opened every door for me. I mean, I really can't. I'm here because of Marco Polo, like in this seat because of Marco Polo. And so it's just, it's a special thing to have like this kind of brother and maybe uncle.
Like my sister.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Man, you had to make me old. I mean, I am.
But so yeah, I mean, it's really, I can't say enough about it. And I try really hard, and I haven't been able to do it yet, but I try really hard to pay this forward. And I hope to have the opportunity to do so.
And that's not true. She has, because the writers that you hired into the second season are people that you knew that
That's
worked
true.
hard for you in the past,
That's
and you
true.
promoted them. So
That's true.
she's full of it.
I think it's also being open to taking things that don't feel obvious, right? Like I know for me, my doors were opened when I took chances, took pay cuts. I mean, not to say anyone should do that. I just did that. But it was always because of who was offering, not what it was. And so a lot of those opportunities were like not the straight and narrow, but having a mindset that it doesn't have to be the thing you think it is. I know it sounds strange, and you'll know it when it's presented, but that it doesn't, maybe it's not the exact thing, but it's the right person who you're going to learn from, who, believe it or not, that's how luck meets opportunity.
Yeah, I want to build on what every single job in my life, I've taken a pay cut and a title cut in order to work for the right person. Every single job, including this guy. Like legitimately.
Oh,
right?
whoa,
Like my
pay
brother.
cut? Hang on a second.
This guy, my
Wait a
brother.
minute.
Yeah, I mean, I left a
What a
pretty
cheap
nice
son of a bitch.
corporate job, but I think that it's really, I mean, it's true, but I think it's really important, right? Like what B is saying, dead on the money. Work for the person. Don't work for the title. Don't work for the money. Don't get screwed, but you may end up taking a step back in order to take 5 steps forward, for sure.
I saw the gentleman right here in the hat.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was wondering if you could fill in a few more details about the beginning of Dr. Death. So you mentioned you wrote the script, and then you had a producer friend who helped show that around. And how did it go from there to the full season being made? Like, did you sell a spec script and they paid for the whole season up front, or did you have to do a pilot? They paid for a pilot, and then they looked at that, and then they did, or how did all that work?
Sorry. So actually, that's unfortunately, here's the thing. My storytelling is muddled. At best. I have multiple timelines, and those timelines are hard to follow, right, B? Yeah. So actually, that's unfortunately the mixing up of 2 different events in the life. So Dr. Death, it's totally okay. My very first script that I ever sold was actually an if-come deal, which means that you don't get paid unless it gets set up someplace. That was this comedy script that got into the hands of this guy named Gavin Pallone, who's a big producer, and through a series of events, it didn't sell at the end of the day, but it did get me my agent, and then I wrote my next thing, and that sort of led to this domino effect of my career that is, it's boring, so don't worry about it. As it relates to Dr. Death, that was a podcast that was going around in 2018. We were working together on a show called Happy that was on Sci-Fi at the time with Chris Miller. Damn straight. Damn
fans up
straight.
here.
That's right. Yeah, save happy, bring happy back. Even though both of us were like, what are we doing on this show right now? It's crazy. But yeah, so we were working on Happy, and I got the podcast sent to me, the first couple of episodes. But it was me and a bunch of other writers in town, and I just put together a pitch and an idea. Pitched it to Wondery, pitched it to Escape Artists, who were the non-writing EPs. UCP wasn't even on it yet. It was like they had approached me, and then they chose me through a series of mistakes on their part. And then that got backed into UCP because of my deal. I have an overall deal there. So it was really a series of I did the work of putting together an idea of what the show could be, and they chose me. Why? Again, I'm not being self-deprecating or falsely humble. I don't know why, but it just sort of worked out in my favor. Does that answer that?
Yeah, so by the time you did Dr. Death, you had a relationship with UCP already.
Absolutely.
So that you built the relationship over a long time, and then
Yeah, again, the 20-second answer to that was that at the time that this came to me, I was very happy being a number 2. I was a showrunner, but I was like a number 2 to other people who were creating their shows. And I meant it. I mean, it was like a great job. I mean, trying to help other people realize their vision, and you can also sort of duck behind them when they do something wrong. So you'd be like, that was them. I tried to stop them. It was a really good gig. So I was satisfied with this idea that I'd spend 30 years of the rest of my career just doing that. And then so I had an overall with UCP then because of the stuff I was doing with Happy, and I was helping them out on another show called Homecoming, and that's sort of how it sort of bled into a deal. But again, they were not a part of this thing yet. It was like it came to me privately, and then it came to UCP that way because of the deal. I don't know. Did that even make any more sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, of course.
Hi, I'm Heidi Marie Fair, and I'm a producer on This Word Vida Made in America, and I'm also a writer on Station 19, Shonda.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my first season.
Oh, that's awesome. Round of applause, please.
Congratulations.
First, I just wanted to say, without getting choked up, when I'm not in the writer's room, I'm also a full-time caregiver for my mother, and I just want to say thank you for the way you empower caregivers, because I think we as a culture want easy answers, and it's very hard to feel powerful in those situations, so thank you for storytelling around that. But I was wondering what you're excited about in this. Everyone talks about the contracting industry. Like, what new frontier are you excited that it could open up, could change the industry, or could offer opportunity for new ways of telling story?
I mean, I think there's a lot to be desired in the development process. I mean, if I'm being honest, I think, it's been an industry that's been really driven by volume, and that doesn't, not that I still think you can have people employed and do less and be more focused and more intentional and not throw things at the wall and spend more time with the writers. I really wish, as executives, a lot of times you're trying to get things out the door, you're trying to move quickly, and just to have time to talk about an idea, really sit with it, have conversations, be thoughtful. It's hard to do that, especially in the height of peak TV when so much is going out the door and you're just and I definitely think there's a opportunity to value storytelling and be better partners, and do some tweaks within how we develop.
I'm going to try to get somebody from the stadium if I can, and if everybody has a question up there. Yes, I see the big hand up there.
My name is Patrick Hampton. I'm not going to ask you an AI question, I promise.
Uh-oh.
But I was illegally detained in a psych ward up in Canada. So I hear the philanthropy that you're doing is a really big situation. When I was up at Baffled Media, Kevin McLennan approached me to mentor me. I took some time healing, but what would be the appropriate way to approach a company like yourself? Because of the philanthropy on my story, I already pitched it at BAF, and people are interested in it. So I'm looking for partnerships right now, and what would be the most appropriate way to approach you?
Yes, I actually I can't see you, but it sounds familiar. So yeah, maybe it was 2 years ago. No, oh, it was last year. Yeah. Were you there when was that when Ioli was there too? My wife. I don't know. Did you see a beautiful Greek woman next to me? Okay. Got it.
Speaking from the studio side, partnering with a producer or a writer who can help you bring it to life. Fortunately and unfortunately, so many of the ideas that we look at as a studio come through agents and lawyers and managers. And that is not because we're trying to have gatekeeping. Believe me, there's plenty of people who pitch. I'll tell the story one time when my dad took a pitch from a Best Buy salesman because he got a discount on a TV, and I told him I couldn't take that pitch. True story, guys.
That is fantastic.
But there are so many stories that I wish there wasn't that kind of gatekeeping, and a lot of it is for legal purposes, and also so that we, consciously or unconsciously don't take other people's ideas. So my advice would be to partner with a writer or a producer who has that representation, and the story that it sounds like you have to tell is one that needs to be told. So I know that's vague advice. I'm happy to give more details on it, but that is really the best way to do it.
So we probably have time for one more question. I'm going to let Patrick pick, so he's the bad guy at the end. So go ahead, Patrick.
No, I don't like to be the bad guy. I don't. Oh God. Okay. You have 1, 2, 3. Each of you pick a number between 1 and 100.
By the time we finish, there will be time.
Okay. 29. 70. I had 79. Sorry. Oh, I didn't know you didn't see your hand. Can we really only have time for one more?
We can try if you go really quick.
Go really
quick.
quick.
Go ahead.
Go, and then we'll try. Go.
I'll be as quick as I can possibly be. First of all, I'm a writer in Chicago. Not a ton of paid writing opportunities there. But I do have a short film that a director is very excited about, and we're very good at collaborating, right? However, his excitement scares me. So I want to kind of talk about that collaboration. He's so excited that I am worried that it's going to get too big too fast. And it's a short after all. So I'm wondering if there's a time that one of you leaned into someone's excitement and what that outcome was.
It's a short. You're writing. Are you producing?
I am writing, and he's even asked me to be a co-director, which I've never directed. So
Ooh,
all this,
terrible idea.
going on.
No. And do you have a producer or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so I would say bring someone objective, third party in, and it's very because listen, we work with a lot of people who have writing partners. We've heard a lot of stories about writing partners breaking up. It happens, but very clearly defined from the beginning. These are my responsibilities. These are your responsibilities. These are the responsibilities we're going to share. Do not co-direct. It just gets messy. You need one vision. You need one vision on the direction, especially with film. But I think if you stay open and communicate everything, over communicate. I was joking in the writers' room the other day. I was like, I pitched something and he took it and I was like, and then did it. And he's like, take the yes. And I was like, my deepest fear is to be misunderstood. So
You can't be. It's impossible.
I can't be because I use too many words. Yeah. You should see my scripts. But I think, just over communicating and then it's hard, it's like you want to be it's all cool, but it will stop being cool if you don't set the boundaries really strictly.
So we probably have time for 2 minutes, so feel free, Patrick.
Number 70.
So if we're talking about a podcast or a book and you're a no-name writer, but you have the access to the creators, but they obviously want to maintain those screen rights because they're smart and they recognize that what their project is viable. Do you have any advice about that whole chicken and the egg conundrum, which is obtaining said rights before or after you write a spec for that project because you have a vision and you're passionate about it?
I'll take that one because I have to deal with it all the time. So here's the thing. I would try and go get a shopping agreement with the rights holder. And
does that need to be beyond a handshake agreement?
It would ideally, because if you want to go take it out, right? It doesn't have to be for money. If they're fancy, then you're probably going to have a problem. So I would just say if you've written something already, see if you can go back and get a short-term shopping agreement, and then you got to go out and do something with it. When I was a baby producer and I wasn't even partnered with Patrick, that's what I would do. And I would waitress and eat beans, and then I would pay $500 for a shopping agreement for 6 months so that they at least knew that I was real about it and I wasn't necessarily just asking for a freebie. Sometimes an offer of any something is better than an offer of nothing because you recognize the merits of their IP. So, but I think you want to protect yourself with a shopping agreement.
Write your stuff out too.
Have access to production companies, people who are in the know,
Yep.
in the mix.
Yep.
Is there a scenario where those people would believe in your script enough to go and get you
love your script, then yeah, they would be willing to go after it. Absolutely. I'd say that you have to be very transparent with the producers that you're submitting to and let them know that you do not currently have the underlying rights, right? Because I would need to go get those rights before I would take it to my boss.
And the producer might not read it because if they read it and then
they love it
again,
and they can't get
consciously or unconsciously, they also use material from your
Yep.
script. They don't want to open themselves up to lawsuits.
So-
just being the stodgy studio.
Yeah,
exec
well, I was
over
just
here.
about to say, right? Like you just have to be very, very, very careful because you are using somebody else's underlying IP without any sort of an agreement with them.
Sorry, one final follow-up.
Sure.
All that.
Of
As
course.
far as registering it goes with the WGA,
Mhm.
how do you do that exactly? Like, if you have the spec, but it's obviously based off the book, but you've done over a third of it is over 2/3 is original.
You can register, but that's only registering your stuff. You can go online easily on their website and register, but that's not going. That doesn't protect you from all this stuff. That's going to protect your literal this script that I wrote, but that doesn't change the fact that you don't have rights behind it. Yeah. Yeah, go to the WGA website,
Yeah.
East or West.
It's very easy.
Easy.
Doesn't
And it
cost
costs
you
like-
anything.
Yeah. it
Doesn't cost anything, right? Oh, did they start?
If you're not a member, it costs like $25. If you're not a
Oh, that's why.
So I apologize. We do need to wrap, but if you
Been a
didn't
long
get your
time.
question answered, I
Thank
hope you guys can speak maybe with them off
You
the
should
side.
also write that stuff out.
Can we please give a round of applause for our wonderful panelists? Thank you all for coming. Happy SeriesFest.